Welcome to the Power of 10. We're glad you joined us. Before we begin, let's go over the features of the platform you're using today. On the left side is the video window. On the right of the screen, you will see two tabs, Chat and Q&A. We encourage you to be an active member in today's discussion. Use the chat window to say hello to the panel and fellow attendees. Use the Q&A window to submit your questions for the panel. If you have an interest in a question already entered, click the Upvote button. That will make the question rise in priority. Now that we've gone over the platform features, let's begin.
Founded in 1936, Middle Tennessee Electric is the largest electric cooperative in the Tennessee Valley, serving more than 750,000 Tennesseans. Established by its members to serve its members, MTE is focusing on ensuring the evolution of the power grid, helping members navigate energy decisions and make use of more eco-friendly, greener, and cleaner options. Whether it's the addition of more renewables, enabling the full potential of electric vehicles, or empowering each person to have more insight and control over energy efficiency choices, MTE is leading the way. Through innovative programs like the Cooperative Solar Project and 100% renewable options, MTE is strengthening its investments in infrastructure, clean energy, and technology to make its members' lives better today and build an energy future we can all depend on. Learn more today about Middle Tennessee Electric. Energy, service, life.
Hello, welcome to the Power of 10 Forum Series. I'm Robbie Hayes, Chairman of the Board of Directors of Cumberland Region Tomorrow, a nonprofit organization that works to improve the quality of life in our 10-county region. We are excited to engage with you and address some of the most important issues facing our region. We are thankful to the panelists who share their time and expertise with us and you during these discussions. And we are very grateful for our sponsors and all of our supporters who make this series possible. We hope you engage in these discussions and work with us to make our region an even better place to call home.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Power of 10 Forum Series hosted by Cumberland Region Tomorrow. My name is Greg Poston. I'm the Broadband Discipline Leader at Gresham Smith, and I'll be your facilitator today. In today's forum, we'll be discussing connecting rural communities, how broadband can support thriving places. As many of you know, there's been significant investments made to expand broadband technology and networks to rural communities across Middle Tennessee. City and county leaders may not know what opportunities are available or how they can leverage these investments to further their economic development efforts and create a thriving community. But before we begin, let me thank Middle Tennessee Electric for sponsoring this forum. Without their support, we wouldn't have this discussion today. And thanks to all CRT supporters. Today we have a great panel assembled. Let me introduce them to you. William Bradford from United Communications, Brooke C. Carlton, Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, and Deb Sosha from the Enterprise Center in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Welcome to all the panel members and thank you for participating. Let's begin with some general questions about broadband, what it means, why is it important, really what is it? With billions of dollars literally invested in broadband across the country. Brooksy, let's start with you. Can you give us an overview of the broadband and the way it looks in Middle Tennessee? I know you have statewide responsibilities. What places are being served and what are the needs here in Middle Tennessee?
Yeah, good to be with y'all today. Good to see you. I'm oversee the broadband office here at the state with the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. And when we started the broadband office in 2016, we had $10 million to award in grants. The next year we had $15 million, and after that we had $20 million. And we really thought we were making an impact on broadband with that money. And the picture is just so different now. People just really started to understand how important broadband is to their communities. And the state saw that, the legislators saw that, the governor saw that. We've been putting a lot more money toward broadband. So about a year ago was our last announcement of broadband funding, and we announced $447 million in broadband grants. So we have about 75 grantees that are out there right now under construction, getting the broadband out into their communities. And a lot of people, I think, are surprised to learn that in Middle Tennessee, just outside of Nashville, in the Nashville MSA, that there still is a lot of need for broadband. I think if you look at our map, if you go to tn.gov/broadband, you can see our map of who is served. You can look at how well they're served. If they have 25/3 service versus if they have 100/100 service, you can kind of see what kind of quality they have and what kind of internet service they have. I think Dixon County is definitely the most underserved area in Middle Tennessee. Murray County has a huge need still. And Williamson and Cheatham, two counties that touch Davidson County, really have a lot of areas where they still qualify for our funding, where they still need a lot of broadband. So there are some areas that are doing great. I would say Robertson and Montgomery County are doing really well. I think there's one spot in Montgomery County that's not served, and it is basically part of Fort Campbell, which is just a forest, a part of Fort Campbell that's just a forest. And then William will tell you a lot about United and all the work that they are doing in the area.
Great. Thanks, Brooksy. Just a little background on United. We are a subsidiary now of Middle Tennessee Electric, primarily focused on bringing internet to all of Middle Tennessee. And so we've been building fiber in Middle Tennessee since about 2011, sort of long before it was really, really popular. And I have our roots in Chapel Hill, Tennessee, in Marshall County. And like Brooksy said, I was at an event last night, a mile off the highway near Lebanon in Wilson County, and went to a home and they had no internet. And so, it's daily reminders. You can be a couple miles from a population center and still be left behind. And they were utilizing a hodgepodge of wireless and satellite and had to have backup on backup and still didn't have the kind of quality of service needed to just stream and work from home and things like that. So constant reminders. And so since we joined forces with Middle Tennessee Electric in 2018, we've really focused on one of our key initiatives, which is Project Unite. And the goal of Project Unite is to see every Middle Tennessean who lacks access to broadband get it. To date, we've brought service to almost 20,000 homes and businesses that have formerly lacked access to broadband. So making a huge impact. We're very thankful, to a certain degree, we're just getting started. We were one of the recipients of the last round of grants that the Tennessee ECD administered, and those projects have been in flight for about a year, with the bulk of the installs coming online in 2024. So there's another 14,000 locations in Middle Tennessee that are going to get service that have still gone for so long without broadband, thanks to these great programs. And we're very excited about the one coming out later this year, early next year, that hopefully will allow us to go even deeper into these rural unserved areas.
William, would you have been able to serve these customers without the assistance from the grants?
What I tell people is our DNA has always been to serve the rural, hard to serve areas, and we've always had an aggressive goal to see everybody get service. What the broadband grant programs have done is allowed us to do it in a matter of 2, 3, 4, 5 years instead of multiple decades. We like to think we'd have ultimately gotten to places, but the truth is, there are some places we're averaging 2 or 3 homes a mile, and without the grant programs, realistically they never would have gotten service. And so these grant programs are critical in allowing us to do that and do it at a pace that improves the quality of life on a reasonable time frame.
Brooksy, you had mentioned the $447 million that you're working with now. Can you elaborate on that? Where does that money come from? What's the genesis of that? How is it determined what Tennessee gets maybe versus other states? Can you just elaborate on the funding opportunities for broadband here?
Yeah, I think that's really important. We have moved from primarily state funding for broadband to federal funding. So when COVID hit, we put our first bit of COVID money into broadband. This $447 million was part of the American Rescue Plan. So each state got an allocation of American Rescue Plan funding, and Tennessee decided to put $450 million into broadband infrastructure of the state's money. So we're doing federal funds there. And then I'll say we actually have applications open right now for funding. So this is part of another batch of federal funding. It's called Capital Projects Fund. It's from U.S. Treasury. And we have $125 million in applications now for middle mile broadband that connects last mile customers. So middle mile is the portion that you kind of need just to get out to the customers. And then the last mile is what actually connects those homes. So this is a new program that was specifically allowed with that capital projects funding from the U.S. Treasury. You can do grants of up to $15 million as long as you're doing middle mile that also has a last mile component to it. So you're still connecting houses, but it gives you some of the money that you can put toward the infrastructure that we are not normally able to fund, that just kind of gets you out there. And then William kind of mentioned that we have even more funding coming. So the NTIA, the National Telecommunications Association, announced $42 billion in federal funding that was going to broadband. And just a couple months ago this summer, they announced that Tennessee's allocation of that is over $813 million. So right now we're in the middle of developing a plan for how that money is going to be spent, and a plan for how every household in Tennessee is going to be served with that $800 million. Once that plan gets approved by NTIA, then we will be doing grants. We expect to offer that funding out in grants next summer.
So those are staggering amounts of money, Brooksy, as I know you realize. What is the biggest challenge for you and your department as you communicate these availability of funds across the state? What is your approach to, I guess, getting the word out if people haven't heard about it in detail?
I think, we try to spend a lot of time on communication. We just had a webinar about an hour ago about some of our new program funds that are out. We're trying to do a lot of outreach right now, just making sure that the communities know about the funding, that the communities get in touch with broadband providers in their area and ask them to apply for the funding. That's big. And the hardest thing now is $800 million sounds like a lot compared to when we had $10 or $20 million available. But as William said, some of these houses are 2 houses per mile, 3 houses per mile. Maybe we've got a few left that are 10 houses per mile. It is just really, really expensive to get broadband to these last few houses that we have.
Will these funds cover all Tennesseans, Brooksy?
That is the plan, and that's what NTIA wants to see from us. They want to make sure the allocations were determined based on how many unserved households we have left. Again, those maps on tn.gov/broadband show you kind of what those look like. And that's how we got the $800 million. And it is intended to serve every household. We hope every household gets, high quality fiber. But there may be some other technologies out there that we use to hit some of those last households that are just really, really hard to hit.
Great. So lots of funding, lots of support from state agencies as well as federal agencies for broadband deployment. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about collaboration, how that as you seek these funds or as you try to develop broadband in your community, what is the best way to make that happen? Deb Socha, as I introduced earlier, she is with the Enterprise Center in Chattanooga, Tennessee, one of my favorite towns, Deb. What is the key to success as collaboration? Because you've got a lot of experience with it with the Enterprise Center. And tell us a little bit how it's worked with you and your organization.
Thank you. I do want to mention that the Broadband office in the state of Tennessee has been amazingly helpful. And if folks haven't reached out to them and had a conversation with them, I highly recommend you do. When it comes to collaboration, I tell folks the time you need the network is not the time to build the network, right? Mm-hmm. You really have to be able to network and have collaboration in advance of that moment when you need it. So I highly recommend that folks work on building that relationship with other folks, because in a crisis or an urgent opportunity, it's really hard to pull it together. So for us, we actually meet often in different groups that really work on the issues related to broadband adoption, economic development, and research. We have started the Chattanooga Smart Community Collaborative, and we bring together the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, the city, the county, our electric and broadband utility, EPB, healthcare providers, our team. We all get together once a month and talk together about what's available. What are the grants? What are the issues we're seeing, and how can we solve them? What projects should we engage in? If we see a grant opportunity, we determine who in that room is best to lead that opportunity. And then we collaborate on writing and editing and getting letters of support. I'll give you an example of how that worked for us. We really wanted to build a smart corridor through our town for research and other uses. The issue was we applied for this great grant and didn't get it. And so then the question is, can we do it without the grant? And we did indeed, because we had a good relationship with the city public works department. They brought out their trucks and installed the equipment. Our team worked on community engagement. The University of Tennessee, Chattanooga managed the data storage, analysis, and infrastructure. EPB provided electricity and bandwidth. So together we could be flexible, facile, and responsible, which is not something that big universities or cities are typically known for. But as a collaboration, you can make that happen. It has actually resulted in the city receiving hundreds of millions of dollars in federal grants to support our community. And so I just think finding ways to connect on a regular basis. I have the mayor's phone number on speed dial. I have the head of EPB's phone number. I have the superintendent's, right? We have a relationship and a trust already established. So in a crisis, we can actually solve problems together.
So Deb, I know Chattanooga is one of the early adopters of broadband through primarily works of EPB that's there. Since you're one of the early adopters, what does a smart city look like to you?
You know, folks ask that question a lot. And the truth is, everybody who answers gives a different answer. To me, if we're going to talk about a smart city, we really have to talk about those resources, applications, and opportunities, not just being available to everyone, but elevating everyone. And so for me, that's what a smart city can do. It can provide support around quality of life. You know, our smart corridor is being used to do predictive analytics on traffic issues so that we can reduce pedestrian injuries, right? How does technology change what we're doing in order to improve the way people are living in Chattanooga and change the outcomes around health, quality of life in general? And if we're not seeing that happen, I can't consider it a smart city. I think some cities jump at every little special gold bar that comes by thinking this is our solution. But if it's not part of a bigger, broader conversation about what the city's needs look like, I prefer not to jump on board with that.
So Deb, I'm an engineer, and I know other people on the call are. There's the building aspect, the engineering and the building of the network, but then there's the connectivity to how do you translate that into a community? Deb, have you seen, is the technology side even something that you focus on, or do you strictly focus on how can we take this technology and integrate it into a community?
We actually work quite a lot on digital equity issues. And so we do indeed focus on having access. You know, one of our challenges during the beginning of the pandemic was that, like all of us, we sent our children home to go to school, right? And who had no access? We had a fairly large number of low-income families that could not afford access. And so we all got together, the mayor, the head of VPB, the county, the local philanthropy, EPB got together, and we created a pathway for an intervention for that. We've connected 17,000 school children to 300 megabits symmetrical at home at no cost to the family. And we are committed to this for a 10-year period, at least, probably longer. And I think that access is incredibly important, not just for education, but within education. When you think about the ability to look at your child's grades, when you look at the ability for children to collaborate on documents because they can use a Google Doc to create a document collaboratively. But I also love how it allows for spontaneous learning and allows children to go and look for something that they're interested in right in that moment. So, you know, we care deeply about ensuring 100% access in children and adults' homes, and we really do work on that. We did get an FCC grant to work on the Affordable Connectivity Project and to get more and more of our residents signed up for that. If they don't qualify for our Ed Connect program, do they qualify for our ACP program? And if they don't qualify for that, what are the other low-cost programs available? And we make sure when we are training folks for digital skills that we are also making sure they are connected at home.
Thanks, Deb. William, I'm sure listening to Deb discuss Chattanooga and things that they're doing there, you probably have some examples of communities that you've served where you've provided partnerships between community leaders, banks. Talk to us a little bit about maybe an example or a few of how that you've been building collaborative efforts to build out broadband to communities in your turf.
Greg, great question, and I love hearing Deb talk about the creative things they're doing in Chattanooga to make these programs a success. And you know, here, Project Unite, really, that's why we formalized this program, is all about creating partnerships. We, even with the grant dollars available, we've got to be really smart on how we deploy these networks and spend our money, and it's got to be really thoughtful, and we want it to be a success from the beginning. And so part of that is having great partners. First and foremost, you know, we've partnered with the underlying utilities, Middle Tennessee Electric and Duck River Electric in Middle Tennessee. They serve almost 400,000 homes and businesses combined. We recognized, you know, a long time ago, they've got some critical infrastructure that could be used to make it easier to get broadband to the hardest served areas. And so for us, working really smart with our electric partners on how we deploy broadband, work together to identify unserved areas, that was extremely critical. When we get down to the community level, almost every single project starts with multiple community meetings. We've had county commissioners go knock on doors for us to generate interest in projects. We usually hold community meetings at schools or libraries, volunteer fire departments, any location we can get, and to get the community out and talk about the need for broadband and how the projects can be successful. A lot of times we'll have businesses that'll step up and say, you know, we need this network to run our business, and so we're willing to commit, you know, for a 3-year contract for internet service, if you guys can build it and, you know, help be anchor tenants. I mean, those are called anchor institutions. And so having the anchors sign up and help make sure a project's going to be a success when it starts is really important. Most of those anchors also have lots of employees or talking to constituents in the community. So it's a nice vicious cycle when you get that interest level up. You know, Eagleville is a great example. You know, the day that project was lit and tested and ready for customers to be installed, I think we had 50% of the community already signed up for service. And so when day one, when you can build a project and have so many members of the community get get signed up on day one, you really accelerate the impact and make it that much more of a success that faster. So, for us, it's all about collaboration. I would say I wish there was a cookie cutter approach, but every community is different. And so it really starts with great conversations. Every single one of our grant applications, we've had a high level of engagement from the county mayors, from the school superintendents, from the health departments, county commissioners, business leaders, chambers of commerce, and all of that is critical to making these projects a success.
William, I know a lot of these mayors and county mayors, Eagleville's a great example. Do you get feedback that comes back to you from these communities and their leaders about this has just really transform our community, or do you have any examples that maybe you could share there?
Yeah, Eagleville is a great example. We're not just building networks disappearing, right? We're hiring people in these communities that work for our company. We've grown from 40 to almost 200 local employees as we've grown to support this network that we're building and the many customers that have signed up. Eagleville is a great example. So we support Christmas parades and fall festivals, and we're involved in the events of the town. That first Christmas parade that we went to, and we had bucket truck in the parade. I mean, residents were coming up and hugging our technicians and thanking them for getting service. We had one lady that was working 3 jobs, and she was in tears talking to our installer and said she can now have one job and work from home because she has the internet at home that will allow her to work the best job that she could have. And so the impact that had on her life, I think almost every single application we've had school children write letters about, having to ride up the road and download their assignments, and the ability to log on at home is really, really important to their success in the classroom. So, it's the personal stories. We try to do videos and capture a lot of those personal stories because they're really just great personal stories and validate why this is such a priority.
Thanks, William. Brooksy, from a state perspective, you've heard some examples of Chattanooga and in Middle Tennessee with William and United. So I'm sure you've got a lot of stories from across the states about how communities are working and collaborating to provide broadband to their constituents, I guess you would say. How does the state recommend, or how does the state recommend broadband providers work in a collaborative way to increase their access to the networks?
Yeah, so one of the things about these grants is that we are giving grants to internet service providers. So we're giving grants to the Uniteds of the world rather than to cities and counties. So a lot of times the cities and counties just kind of back out and they say, that's not my thing. Maybe I'll make some calls or do some things. But the most successful projects, and William can tell you this, that the best projects are the ones where the mayor calls and says, I have this area, I get calls from them daily about needing internet service. Can you prioritize this as your next service area, your next area that you're going to apply for? And say, I will help you get those letters of support. I will go to the school and I will ask the students to write the letters, and I will collect them and I will give them to you to include in your application. Those are things that the local governments can be doing all for the broadband infrastructure projects to make sure that you show support. We love it when the local governments come in with funding or in-kind support or something like that, just to show, it doesn't have to be a whole lot of money or a whole lot of support, but just to show that, hey, we know this is really important. We are working with the broadband providers. They're not just out here doing this by themselves and assuming that we want the broadband. We've talked to them. They know we want it. We can help them get to that immediate 50% take rate. So the local governments really do have a role to play in applying for these infrastructure funds.
So I'll put you on the spot a little bit, Brooksy. No need to name names, but what's some examples of things that communities you've worked with across the state? Maybe give us an example of where you just really felt like the whole community pulled together to make this happen. Something pop into your mind that you can give an example?
They do not let me read the broadband applications, the technical parts of the broadband applications. I don't score those. We have engineers that score those, but I do score the community support parts of the application. So I have read all of those letters from school kids, and they are just hilarious. You'll have kids that say, I can't watch my Netflix shows, I can't play my video games. And then they'll also, bring in something like, maybe I also can't do my homework or, download my assignments. But you kind of get the whole range of perspectives when the school kids write in the letters. And then you get people who, like the example from earlier, that they can access a better job, they can access telehealth, they can talk to their grandkids, they can see their grandkids on FaceTime or through whatever else. So reading the community support letters is always really fun. And there have been grantees that have sent 600 letters with their applications. They have just gone absolutely above and beyond in getting community support, and maybe sending surveys along with that says, if broadband is available, I will sign up. And I've even paid a deposit to show that, even though I know it may be 2 years away, I've paid my deposit to show that I'm going to sign up for service. And that's an incredible amount of support.
So William, you talked about your relationship with Middle Tennessee Electric, I believe, starting in 2018. As most of us know, the pandemic started, I believe, in March, generally considered March of 2020. What changed between 2018 and 2020 for you? And then how did the COVID pandemic kind of transform your approach to before March 2020 and after March 2020?
Yeah, great question. Interestingly, I remember that day that Williamson County, the first COVID case happened in Williamson County. I was actually in the car. We heard it on the radio driving back from Atlanta. We'd gone to meet with our bank about increasing our credit facility so we could build more rural projects faster. So my CFO and I were literally driving back from Atlanta when we were getting on the phone and figuring out how to get all our employees working from home. But let me back up for a second. So Project Unite existed before the pandemic, and really we had identified a need. We were hearing it. We live in our communities, and so we were already hearing it, that there's still a strong need for broadband. We had one of our largest employers in Marshall and Bedford County was trying to upgrade their inventory system. They were going to a new cloud-based inventory management system, allow them to be more efficient and compete globally. And the day they went live on it, it failed because they didn't have the broadband infrastructure to support the bandwidth. And immediately we began working to build them a dedicated fiber network between all their offices. And and so there are lots of stories of great need. Immediately when the pandemic hit, we were busier than we ever were. There were still people that went without broadband, even in areas that had it available. And what you saw immediately was we had a record influx of calls for orders. And so I really have to give a shout out to our team. With all the unknowns of COVID at the time, our team was committed to doing installs. We were still going in customers' homes and trying to get as many people connected because they knew how their jobs and education depended on it. And so our team stepped up, and I couldn't have been more prouder than what they did at a time, the greatest amount of uncertainty. And really, we haven't seen a slowdown since, quite honestly. So, what the pandemic's done is really highlighted what was already coming, and it probably pulled forward by a decade at least, the demand for technology and the demand for connectivity at the home level. And so it was important as a local provider that we stepped up and met that demand of our community.
So, William, would it be an accurate statement to say that broadband development employment has always been in the works, but COVID accelerated it?
Absolutely. I think probably by a decade at least, it pulled forward the adoption of technology and the demand. And if you look at it, beyond the pandemic, almost everything we're doing, and really the government, is moving so many basic functions online. It's you almost have to have it to renew a driver's license or to do day-to-day things that you'd normally go into an office for. And now that the pandemic's over, all these things are moving online and they're not going back. And so to a certain degree, we're sort of forcing people to have a connection because there's so many, federal, state, local services that are just moving online in general. And we sort of, we met with a county mayor a few weeks ago about how to communicate with the residents of the county that broadband's coming under a project. We sort of had to remind ourselves they don't have email, they don't have internet, so we still have to direct mail them and communicate with them an old-fashioned way to let them know how to sign up for projects. And we can't just post it online and trust they're going to find that information. So there's still so many people that are not able to benefit from the way we even communicate today, let alone stream and participate in telehealth and online education.
Let's shift to a little bit of a different topic about economic development. That's a great discussion on the collaboration piece and the funding coming from the state and federal governments and things. And as Deb had mentioned earlier, even self-funding some of these projects that are very important. When we have lots of investments into our broadband network, what does it do for the economic side of our development? Deb, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. You've worked quite a bit, as you said earlier, to leverage the technologies that you have to support economic development in the Chattanooga area. Can you tell us some of the keys to success that the community leaders that are on this call can take from your experience?
Sure. One of our projects is Tech Goes Home, which is a digital equity support project, and it provides 15 hours of digital skills training, a device, and support to get home access. And that has helped an awful lot of small businesses, young college students continue to participate. I think William's story about businesses that require this was really helpful to think about. I think there's an awful lot of people in that circumstance. And so what we really did was looked at who doesn't have access and how is it impacting them and what can we do to support them. And a good example of that are the early childhood educators who, once the pandemic came, everything went online. They couldn't apply for a license. They couldn't get professional development or report professional development. And to be honest, a lot of our early childhood educators are older and are sole proprietors. So they didn't have a lot of support around them and didn't have great facility with technology. And so we do work with early childhood centers all across the state to help those early childhood educators learn the skills they need in order to continue to keep their license, to be able to have a device, which we give them a device, and then to make sure they had home access. And I think, William's stories are really helpful, and Brooksy too, about places where there is no access and how can we help those folks figure this out. And that has been a challenge for us in some of the more rural areas and in some of the low-income urban areas, but we continue to work at that. But that is a really important piece of this work, is to figure out who doesn't have access. What can we do to intervene there? Another group we worked a lot with during the pandemic was the faith-based folks who could no longer provide a sermon or collect tithes or do anything that they normally do. And for a lot of our folks, having that connection to their faith-based leader was imperative, especially during this very difficult time with the pandemic. And so just looking at who doesn't have access was really important to us. We did work a lot. I think when you think about who doesn't get connected here, a lot of folks who are artists and entrepreneurs need some support. A lot of our college students need them. And I think one of the most important things we learned and have been able to support is really the workforce development side of this. So for example, Chattanooga State here runs a project where they provide training, but folks will need to use technology to receive that training. And so we run our Tech Goes Home program right up front to that training. There isn't really a job anymore where you can say, I don't need to have technology or access. And so how are we thinking about folks who are welders? How are we thinking about folks who are early childhood educators, right? And how do we help everyone have those skills so that we can really build a much stronger pipeline of folks into living wage jobs? And that has been really important to us.
Can you give us some examples, Deb, of where you've seen the quality of life in your community improve? I know you've probably been touching on that all along, but what are some examples of where quality of life has improved for the Chattanooga residents?
Yeah, well, I'm really glad you asked that, Greg, because I actually do have a nice story. We run a project with Chattanooga State and the city called Impact. And that project helps folks who are working in low-paid jobs move into a job that would pay them to maintain their quality of life in a very different level. And so Impact trains folks on the Google certification. You can do it individually, but folks who do it individually have a very low passing rate. And so we wanted to bring people together and do it as a cohort with a proctor in the room. So we run a 6-week class, 40 hours a week. Folks get a stipend that will replace that low cost wage, right? If I am a low income person working 2 or 3 part-time low cost jobs, I have to keep working those or I can't pay my rent. And so we replace that by providing a stipend while they're working on their certification. We help them with childcare, with transportation. It's really a very supportive project. We provide tech goes home in a device up front. And we've had several graduating classes. And one of my favorite stories is a young woman who currently is the chief information officer or the chief IT person for the city of Red Bank. So she now has insurance, a livable wage, and a very different quality of life for her and her family. And that's really our goal. How are we know that this technology brings people to Chattanooga, right? But what we really want to think about is how are we helping people who live here access that information and opportunity to change their quality of life.
So Deb, you probably see a lot of, like you said, the existing residents, the local people who've been there probably most of their lives, and then there's a lot that's been written about a lot of the tech community that's moving to Chattanooga from other areas of the country because they do have a great wired network there, broadband network in Chattanooga. Do you get involved with the tech community when they come into your community as well? I'd love to hear you talk a little about the differences between those two groups of people and how your organization maybe can help both.
We actually often help folks integrate here in Chattanooga when they move here. Our chamber does a great job of that as well. They run a project called Chattanoobies, which brings together folks who are moving to the city to get to know one another and network. I think one of the concerns has been that folks are coming here to work remotely, and how did they get integrated? How do we connect with them? How do we provide them with opportunities to connect? So one of the projects that we're working on is called Black in Tech. We're actually going to be a local affiliate. There is one in Nashville. There's one in Memphis. But the idea of that is that very often folks of color are the only person of color on the tech team in an organization. How are we helping them be connected in this community, build friendships, build relationships, connect to things they care about? And so this project has been incredibly successful. We've just recently launched, and our first meeting, we had 80 folks show up. I think thinking about who is it and where are they and how do we reach out to them? How do we provide them with the opportunity to connect? And for us, a lot of that is through events that we either run locally here in our building in the Edney or somewhere in the community to connect folks. And always keeping in mind that we're not just working on those who have just arrived, but integrating those folks with people who are already here.
It's awesome. It's awesome. William, do you possibly have an example of within your broadband community there about anyone who has used the network broadband to go out and attract economic development that you can share with us?
Greg, good question. And the answer is yes. And especially in our rural counties, they all have sites that are targeted for industrial sites or existing industrial sites where they're recruiting businesses. And really, even pre-pandemic, a lot of these companies, the site selection firms or the in-house site selection team, wouldn't greenlight a location unless they had fiber connectivity, and in many cases, unless they had dual fiber connectivity for redundancy. And I think this ties into what ECD is really trying to do with this middle mile program too, is recognizing that there is an important component of the network beyond just retail connectivity, but actually having connectivity to interconnectivity. And what I mean by that is these highway portions of these fiber networks that connect to the network at critical points that support business and state and county needs. And so, Greg, we sort of like to say, we've never built a network to nowhere. Anytime we build a network, it's interconnected. And so we've got United owns fiber connections into the major data centers in downtown Nashville. We have a fiber connection into the state data center in Smyrna. Our state customers, our local offices that are tying into state data center need that direct connection, no matter where they are. The example I gave earlier in Marshall and Bedford and Franklin County was they needed direct fiber connections all the way into Nashville data centers, because that's how they tied into their operations in Michigan, Memphis, and other places. So having that interconnected network allows businesses to be located anywhere and tap into the available workforce. They might overlook a site if there's no fiber connection, even though they might meet the check marks for available workforce or a site that fits their needs. And so what we're trying to do is eliminate barriers to those companies locating. So many times, we partnered with the chamber when they're pitching on a business to locate to this location. We've done this in Rutherford County and populated counties where we committed to have dual fiber feeds to the site by the time they occupied it. And these are locations that formerly have had no fiber connection. And so for us, that was really important. We benefited. There's a better employer there. There's going to be more jobs there. The existing residents are going to have access to better jobs, and they're going to want more internet connections themselves at home. So for us, it's just that beautiful business development, economic development cycle. And so we pretty much told any economic and industrial development board that there's a site that they're trying to recruit to in one of the counties we serve, we'll make sure it has fiber. That should never be an impediment to recruiting a business.
Business world is becoming, it's an exception if you don't have a fiber optic network. And
we've done that. You wouldn't believe places, Antioch, Smyrna, that, locations, businesses are looking to locate that didn't have the connectivity they needed. And so it's throughout the entire region.
It's awesome. Brooksy, you're in the Economic Community Development Department. I'm assuming it's not an accident that the Broadband Deployment Group is within this department. Talk to us a little bit about why broadband is important to economic community development at a state level. What kind of state level leadership goes into this type of organization? And talk to us a little bit about how it's so important with what you do as the overall economic development.
Yeah, I think Deb and William just both hit on it really well. What William said, every industrial site has to have fiber. It has to have, really dependable, really good internet. It can't have something that's going to go out if their manufacturing processes depend on it. So, that's just one of the basic things that was really important when we first started the broadband program as part of ECD, was making sure that all of our companies have access to that. And I think that we have done, all of our broadband providers, nothing ECD has done, but all of our broadband providers have done a great job, like William said, of making sure they get connections. And then from there, I think some of the things that the communities can do is to really understand what your community members' needs are. We have lots and lots of opportunities for work from home right now. It's a great way to get different people into your community, to recruit people to your community, and realizing that maybe not everybody wants to work from home all day, every day. So we actually have a program called Tennessee Placemakers that's not associated with our broadband program, that you can set up a co-working space so that somebody, if they want 1 day a week or 2 days a week, a half day a week, to come into an office and have a place where they can have community with people if they're able to work from home and still want that aspect. We love having that. One of the great things and how national. So how can we set up small facilities, business learning, so that you can come in at once and then you're on your phone. Advantage of this. We have a connected communities facility program where we have that. And that is to provide a facility that will have workforce development, broadband access, and we'll have
Brooks, if you don't mind, we're having a little trouble with your audio. I'll shift over while you're looking at that.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if I was the only one here. I think when you said okay there, it sounded normal. As we shift to digital access or digital equity, just wanted to remind everyone to please ask your questions. I think you've heard from our panel members enough to prompt some great questions. So be sure and put those in, as the introductory video said. Be sure and put those into the system. So we will have some time set aside a little bit later for your questions. The equity we hear a lot about today, digital equity. We hear a lot about. Much of what we've discussed today has been building the broadband network, but that's just a piece of the puzzle, right? So if we have the network available and the network to other people, there still are barriers for certain people to be able to get it, because sometimes, just broadband can cost maybe $100 a month, something to that effect, where we have some of our lower income residents that's a stretch for many of those as well. Deb, you had touched on it a little bit earlier, and I can tell it's a passionate topic for you. Could you talk about the Enterprise Center and how you've been able to close that broadband gap and make it more affordable for all of your residents?
The bigger challenge for us was really thinking about how do we help folks understand the work that we're doing, and how do we help them feel trust in the process. Like everything else, we tell folks there's no such thing as a free lunch, but our internet access for low-income students was free. So how do we say there isn't a catch here, but sometimes there's a catch if it's something else? Like helping people to understand and trust was really important. And I think one of the most important things that we have worked to build was trust. Trust with our communities, trust with our anchor institutions. Without that trust, we cannot be successful. And so initially, a lot of the work that we did, we went through trusted community anchor institutions, through faith-based folks, local librarians, local schools, and so forth. Right now, we have about 200 local community partners that we work with to provide support in terms of digital equity. And so it's sort of like getting trust by proxy, if that makes sense, right? You may not know me, and you may not trust me, but I'm working with the pastor at your church and you trust him, right? So doing a little work in building that level of trust. And I know I didn't say this first, but I've heard it several times. Progress happens at the speed of trust. I think that's a really helpful way to look at it, right? How do we help build the level of trust necessary for us to be successful in the community. And so working with local organizations allows us to do that, but it also allows us, for example, when we do a training in one of our neighborhoods, say Orchard Knob, we do a training in Orchard Knob. The trainer works in Orchard Knob or lives in Orchard Knob and remains in Orchard Knob. So I do the training this week and I live or work there forever. You can come and ask me another question, right? So it allows for continuity of support, which we love. And I think the other piece that we find is that, like helping our folks who are employed find connections, we do have a lot of folks who are seniors or are disabled who require the same, right? And how are we providing direct support for them? So one of the things Tech Goes Home has done for us is allowed us to be flexible. I might want to teach somebody my age about telehealth, but I might want to teach the mom of a 7-year-old how to use the school portal. And so we allow for that level of flexibility within the training. You get what you need, if that makes sense. I would say the other piece for us is really thinking about something, I think William said it earlier, is to ask the question, to not assume I know the answer. But rather than saying, here's what I can teach you, or here's what I can give you, say, what do you need? What are your pain points? Where are your issues? And how can we help you fill those by providing support through technology? For us, that has been very successful. And I think I mentioned earlier, we've just graduated our 10,000th participant in Tech Goes Home, and we've connected 17,000 children. So it's been a powerful opportunity. And the pandemic indeed did change the conversation, did add money, as Brooksy mentioned, did add money to support it. And we're thankful for that. We'd have liked to have had it without the pandemic, but since we got it the way we did, we're going to use it as well as we can to provide the level of support to every community we can support.
Deb, do you ever have, I know you spoke with working with the elderly and trying to adopt technology, and it could be any age group of your residents there. Have you had much success or programs associated with telemedicine and the ability for possibly some of our elderly to have connections with their medical, their doctors and nurses to help them if they're homebound, for example?
We actually have done quite a lot in that space, particularly for seniors. And what we've been able to do is run our Tech Goes Home program in senior centers across the state, and then put in place a telehealth station that allows them to do their telehealth support from the senior center. Unfortunately, for some of our seniors in the rural parts of the state, they couldn't do it from home, right? But rather than driving maybe 2 hours to see a specialist, they can go to the local senior center and have a telehealth appointment. We have another project here in Chattanooga, actually in the Orchard Knob neighborhood, where our local healthcare provider in that neighborhood is Park Ridge, and they actually are providing 1,000 free telehealth appointments to connect with Tech Goes Home and other efforts that are all happening collaboratively. And that was through a grant from TVA. And we're imagining, as we work through this, the playbook that we will write so we can replicate it ourselves, but also share that work with others so they can replicate. In particular, for seniors, we want to make sure that we are providing folks the opportunity to age in place. Let folks stay in their home for as long as they possibly can, and technology can allow that.
Absolutely. Brooksy, I think you've swapped microphones. Hopefully everything's working well, and I hope I didn't cut you off last time. Something important you were saying. As we talk about equity and digital equity, what kind of funding sources are available to address this very real issue, especially in some communities?
Yeah, sorry about that. I think that, like Deb said, we have a lot of money right now, and that means that for the first time we can do some digital equity programming instead of just infrastructure. So we have several grant opportunities right now. Again, tn.gov/broadband to get information on these. But I think three that I want to highlight really quickly. Broadband Ready Communities is for up to $100,000 for each county in Tennessee. It's non-competitive to focus on whatever you need to focus on. So maybe it's getting more people into the connectivity program. Maybe it's digital skills training. Maybe it's bumping up service in your libraries. And then we also have $17 million that is going toward digital skill or going to workforce development programs. So we can do programs at TCATs or community colleges that are for digital equity or workforce development skills. And then the Connected Community Facilities grants are for facilities that provide broadband access, healthcare, and workforce development all in the same facility. So maybe you need to expand your health department and add a place where you can do a TCAT class there and have free Wi-Fi at the facility. So all three of those grant programs make up about $70 million that we'll be putting out over the next year for those programs for digital equity, digital skills training, digital opportunity funding.
William, along the same lines, what type of challenges do you see as an internet services provider for people being able to access your network?
Yeah, great question. I think we told the story earlier of Eagleville. Where on day one, you already sort of have 50% of the residents sign up. The next year or two of signups is always the hardest and the slowest. And, it's involves being in the community. We have a dedicated staff that'll go door to door. We still use old ways of communicating with people in addition to new ways. So really it's finding how do you communicate people the way they want to be communicated with. And a lot of times it's still just not. We'll sign up people a year or two after a project's done, and they'll say, we never knew that service was available at our house, even though we might have reached out to them in 10 different ways, and you don't know what the right way is. So clearly, persistence is important. Outside of those projects, I thought I'd share a story, about Murfreesboro, and I think it crosses all the topics of the day. But we partnered with TVA, the Murfreesboro Housing Authority, Middle Tennessee Electric, and of course United, to get bring a TVA grant to some of the Murfreesboro Housing Authority complexes. And so we provided 3 years of free gigabit internet to every single resident of those complexes. But additionally, we tied it into education around how technology can help you better manage your energy utilization. So there are lots of tie-ins to saving money on your utility bills, onto a path to a greener future, and all those things that technology are required to support that. And so part of it's just educating folks on the benefits that come from broadband beyond just getting those basic connectivity needs served. And we see that around the rural areas, how much money folks can save when they have a reliable, fast internet connection. They can actually save a lot of money on their satellite service and their wireless bills. And so there's a lot of economic interest at the resident level in having a high quality, affordable internet connection, because you can save on all these other things you're paying a premium for because you didn't have broadband. And even streaming provides lots of opportunities for cost savings for folks in their basic entertainment needs. So for us, it's really just continuing to make that next step and make that sort of obvious on all these other things that folks can benefit from when they have an affordable, reliable internet connection.
Many things have been said about fiber connectivity to homes, but obviously fiber connectivity to businesses are just as important. Do you see that the business community leads the residential community, or vice versa, or is it something where you go into a community, you're trying to bring both areas up together?
I would say pre-pandemic, it was definitely the business community that led it. A lot of times we could go bring service to a rural area because the business community was willing to step up and commit to taking services, and that, that helped to sort of, helped close some of the funding gaps. I'd say over the last 3 or 4 years, it's been equal. You see the need and the urgency across all the constituents in a community. And so for us, it's just one of the many pieces that we have to figure out as we build these networks.
What does the fiber fully connected community of tomorrow look like to you, Deb? Here we are today in 2023. It's hard to believe, several years out of the pandemic. When you project maybe 5 years forward as the network, the fully networked community, what does that look like to you in the future? What's your vision for it?
I can imagine that there will be far more opportunities for folks to connect, collaborate, and work from home or from wherever they choose to work. I think that will continue to be a trend. We've seen a little bit of a shift back to in-office more recently, but that's not universal, and I think that will be true. I think there'll be, what I hope there will be is universal connectivity to the point where I can walk from neighborhood to neighborhood and always be connected. I would love to see that happening more. I think we're going to see a lot more done with telehealth. The telehealth piece is really interesting to me. When Mignon Clyburn was on the FCC, she used to talk about telehealth being that sort of piece of magic that could win the day because it shows the economic impact of availability, right? It could save millions and millions and millions of dollars if we used more telehealth. And so how do we think about, bringing that about for all of our communities, because it could be helpful to all of us. So I think there'll be a lot more telehealth. Right now they have devices that cost $100 that you can put your fingers on and it gives you an EKG, right? That's pretty dang amazing, right? So what does that develop into, and how does that change the way that we are taking care of each other in terms of our health needs? I think education will be far more interesting. I think we've done children really understand how to use technology to play, but we really need to shift some focus to teach them how to learn. And I think that helps our young folks who are going through college be successful. And then we need to teach them while they're in college how to use technology to work. So I'd love to see more of that continuum happening, and I'd love to see a lot more ubiquity.
Thank you. Brooksy, from a state perspective, kind of the same question. How does the state project out 5 years for the future of the broadband network and how it relates to economic development?
Yeah, with the $800 million, we're really hoping that in the next 5 years, we'll be close to serving every household and business in the state. So I think that is an incredible opportunity to get it out there. But like Deb has said, and like you said, Greg, that just having the access there is only step one. There are lots of steps to make sure that people are taking advantage of it and that are using it and that they're signed up for it, that it is affordable for them to sign up for the internet, that they can pay for it. And so we're glad to be able to have some of those programs in place now that we can help with some of those, make sure that people are taking advantage of them. I think the telehealth programs are also really amazing programs. I don't know if y'all heard, I think that's what I was talking about when my mic went out, but, with the educational facilities and hospital facilities in Nashville, this is a great opportunity for people in Middle Tennessee. They can go to their doctor in Nashville maybe once, and then after that, they can do telehealth appointments. So it's great for people who live close enough to Nashville to be able to take advantage of the medical facilities, but maybe not have to, drive into downtown Nashville every single time they do an appointment. So there is unlimited. People have asked us, what's going to happen to the broadband office when we get, every household served? I still think there will be a huge need for the broadband office, and that we'll do lots more digital equity programs, digital opportunity programs, helping people get signed up, helping people use the internet for more than just Netflix. Netflix is important. It's a good thing to have, but making sure that people are taking advantage of all the opportunities.
William, from a engineering perspective and construction perspective, I'll kick it back to you. But one thing I think I failed to ask you is about the affordability of broadband. What's your approach with United Communications on the affordability of your product to your members there?
Yeah, we participate in a critical federal program that provides subsidies for internet. So part of the challenges are really just the education around that, just as with the education about broadband availability. So we look at how we partner with schools. I like what I heard from Deb on what they've done in Chattanooga, but how do we get that information home with school children that they can actually have low cost or free internet connections at their house? So I think it's a really important piece. One thing we do is, we have areas that might cost $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a customer to build, and other areas that are, more reasonable to build. And so we have consistent pricing across the whole footprint. And so that's really important for us, is that, the cost some people might, the monthly fee some people might pay for internet are not necessarily reflective of the cost it took to build them, and especially in these rural areas where there's a couple of homes per mile. So for us, that's a really important piece, is to make sure anybody that wants it can get it.
And I'll just add to that, Greg, that every grantee of ours has to participate in the Affordable Connectivity Program and has to have an adoption plan. So that's something that we look at every time we fund a project, to make sure that there are options for people with lower incomes to use the services.
And I would add, if it's available and not affordable, then it's really not available.
You could have the best network in the world, right? But if people can't access it or afford it, it's all for naught, right, Deb? Yeah, it's I think one of the challenges to me from being in the industry, it seems like that was one of the afterthoughts almost, but all the focus was on the major challenges of building a network. But there's just as great a challenge, not only with education that Brooksy was talking about, but then also the affordability, the ability to pay for the service, like Deb and William have been mentioning. William, I know your company probably has a long-range plan where you look at maybe 5 years out. What does the future of broadband and the network look like for you and your organization?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we have a strong view that having a physical fiber optic connection to every home business will be critical, and the things that are coming down the pipeline, we're going to require a lot more bandwidth. I think Amos Hall ECD Summit had some sessions on quantum computing, and that's a whole nother way of transmitting at levels we can't even quantify right now. I guess we've quantified it, but you can't even think about it. But with AI, a lot of the new technologies, we're big believers in fiber. I see from a practical standpoint, we're partnered with electric. So one of the things we're doing as we build our networks is we're helping design a fiber network that will support the grid of the future. And we know the grid of the future cannot come into existence unless there are really fast, low latency, highly reliable fiber networks attached to it. So one of the things a lot of people don't know is when we design our networks, we're connecting a lot of the grid elements along the way. This will support things like distribution automation, which is how do networks heal themselves when there's a cut or some kind of break in the line, right? And so to get that next level of electric reliability, you're going to need the smarts of a network to be able to power that. I'm confident Middle Tennessee Electric, my counterparts and peers there know more than I'll ever know about the grid. But what I do know is Middle Tennessee Electric will be a leader in smart meters and how that technology will benefit their members. How will we support the growing need for electric vehicles on the grid? And a lot of that relates to how do we manage the time of day that their vehicles are charging, the smarts on how to manage load. And so I think there's a lot of really neat things that are going to benefit us a lot sooner than 5 years having a grid that's connected and has a reliable network that can support the kind of applications that are coming out. So I would look straight to our electrics for a lot of these cool things that are coming down, and they're so focused on their member experience that they'll be the first to invest in it.
Thanks, William. As we wrap up, William, I appreciate what you and your United Communications, your partners at Middle Tennessee Electric are doing on the construction of the network and serving your members. Brooksy, thank you so much for giving a great perspective on the funding, what's available, and really from a state and state government perspective. And Deb, thank you for sharing with us the great things that y'all have got going with the Enterprise Center in Chattanooga. And also, I'd like to thank all those who participated in this discussion. CRT will be hosting the Power of 10 Summit on November 9th, where we'll be discussing housing affordability in the region. Please register today on CRT's website. Thank you again, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for attending the Power of 10. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Have a great day.